Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Venus opposing Saturn. Venus is in the late degrees of Virgo, where our recent solar eclipse took place, and so this Venus-Saturn opposition is also reawakening the space of that solar eclipse. We will include that today in our considerations of this aspect, and I'll give you a list of things to watch for. Venus-Saturn oppositions are potent in general, so we'll also take some time to do some horoscopes for this opposition tomorrow. All right, that is our agenda for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Turn on that little notification bell. You can turn on all of the notifications and then receive news when a new episode drops or when we have a live stream. It really helps our channel to grow. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. A couple of promotions for the day before we get into our episode. First one that I'm really excited about is after a while in planning, we are ready to start hosting our Silent Sundays. So if you go to the events page and click on Silent Sundays, you will see that we are going to start hosting once monthly community meditation gatherings. I'm calling it a meditation gathering, but there's really no discipline or doctrine that we're preaching or teaching. Literally just getting together to sit in silence, and for people who might want a little bit more community and maybe even some help in cultivating a space of sitting, listening, meditating. We hope that this will be of value to the community. This kind of goes along with adding in what's on my altar on Mondays. Part of an intention I've had this year to keep cultivating the space of the channel as an intentional space for spiritual practice. So anyway, you can learn more about it on the page here. It is totally free to join. You'll see that there are little join links that will give you the Zoom meetup for our get-togethers. Space will take about an hour. We'll sit in silence together for 30 minutes and then have a little space for reflections and sharing. So if you're interested in something like this, if this might complement your study of astrology, that's what it's there for. So I can't wait to get this rolling. Our first meeting is going to be on October 26th at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. So again, check out the Silent Sundays link on the events page. Of course, the next thing is our first year course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. Our new program begins on November 8th, and you will find an informational video tagged on to the end of today's content. You can find the same video here on the page. There are 30 courses on the year that I lead. They're all recorded, so you can attend the live webinars, or you can follow along at your own pace with the recordings in your class website. You have your own little account that's set up. In between major units of study, there are breakout study sessions hosted by our tutors and our staff. We have guest speakers outside of the normal curriculum that come in, a ton of forum discussion support, so you can ask questions 24/7 throughout the year. It's a really well-resourced program that lets you go as deeply as you want to, whether it's a hobby or something you want to practice for other people. I highly recommend studying ancient astrology to learn the underlying philosophical reason for everything in the language. You learn to speak the language, but you never learn the why and where it all came from. You're really playing with like a half deck of cards. So anyway, this is what I'm best at as well. I really consider myself, my gift as an astrologer, is really teaching. So these programs I've poured a lot of heart and soul into them over 16 years. I hope you'll check them out. Early bird payments are available until October 24th. Tuition assistance is also available. So if you're someone who'd like to study, but you need a little help, you can use a sliding scale that we have for people who are on a fixed or limited income, maybe experiencing financial hardship, or just need to make sure you're not living outside of your means. We want to make sure that studying something spiritual is not prohibitive for people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. All right. Well, on that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock and let us take a look now at the Venus-Saturn opposition. So you can see here as we're heading into the weekend, I'm just going to speed this up just a touch. And actually, let me go back. So you can see the opposition is forming right here. This is Saturday. At about 4 or 5 in the morning, you'll see that Venus is opposing Saturn. Now, that 29th degree of Virgo is where our recent solar eclipse took place. And so as soon as this opposition has passed on Saturday, October 11th, you're going to see that Venus goes through the anaretic degree of Virgo, where the solar eclipse took place, by Monday, October 13th. Which means if we back this up to, say, today, Thursday, October 9th, you are in the range of a pretty dynamic period for Venus starting today, Thursday, October 9th, peaking Saturday as Venus opposes Saturn, October 11th, and then really culminating on Monday, October 13th, when Venus passes through the last degree of Virgo where the solar eclipse took place, and then moves into Venus where her dignity picks up significantly, and she starts to get out of the the alchemical cooking range of those final degrees of Virgo. So let's say Thursday to Monday right now, we're in front of us is a very powerful little window for Venus. Now, what I want to do today is give you some things to watch for, given that entire sequence, without overcomplicating things, and with the consideration that our chief concern looking at this is to understand how Venus and Saturn are interacting, because that really is the most important detail of the sequence. So what I've done today is I've come up with a list of 5 things to watch for. But as you may be familiar with, over the summer, I came up with a new way of breaking these down and elaborating upon my list of 5 things to watch for in terms of the 4 cardinal houses. So there is in all of us a tendency to think about transits in terms of our internal psychological experience of things. That would be a kind of first house area. There is a way that we tend to look at these transits in terms of love and relationships, intimacy, interpersonal life, our career or work or public life, and our family or home dynamics. These broadly reflect the 1st, 7th, 10th, and 4th houses. So this list of 5 things to watch for, sometimes I give just as an archetypal overview of the transit itself. Today, we're going to break them into these 4 areas to give a little bit more depth and nuance, especially because Venus-Saturn, while it tends to bring up things that are relational, because that is the nature of Venus after all, many people will not necessarily notice huge shifts in your relationships because you're going to notice that this is taking place in some other area of your life. So I will also be doing some horoscopes tomorrow. But for now, let's give this list of 5 things to watch for. And let's start with the internal psychological sphere of life. The number one thing that I would watch for is that when Venus and Saturn get together, the tendency is to feel somewhat cut off or isolated. The reasons for that can be many. Maybe you're focused on work. Maybe you're taking time out for yourself. Maybe there's strain in a relationship. But it is not uncommon to feel a little distant or remote or set apart or isolated or lonely when Venus and Saturn come together, or misunderstood or feeling like you don't fit in. These would be common experiences to watch for on the personal internal level. The second thing that I would watch for in terms of the personal and psychological dynamics of Venus and Saturn would be, on the one hand, an enhanced appreciation for what is beautiful. It might seem funny, but Venus and Saturn can actually bring this very refined and more serious and mature appreciation for things, like being able to appreciate something in the arts because you've spent many years in the arts. Venus and Saturn in that sense is like the development of a fine wine. It takes a long time to reach its peak level of maturity, appreciation, respect, insight, and wisdom with respect to what is beautiful or what is valuable or what is appealing. So on the one hand, the appreciation for what is beautiful about yourself, about who you are, can be enhanced during a transit like this. On the other hand, Venus and Saturn can sometimes lead to the voices of criticism getting louder. And so on the one hand, this transit can lead to an enhanced sense of what is most beautiful about you, what has been cultivated over a long period of time that is truly special. And on the other hand, you may want to watch out for the voices saying that you're not good enough. Number 3, closely related to this are issues of self-worth. Venus and Saturn can simply bring up the question, what qualities in me are the most valuable, are the most beautiful, are worth cultivating, are worth building or developing? What qualities in me could get better? And what qualities in me are truly special and unique? So questions about what defines self-worth, and almost like a time to review, do I have the right criteria by means of which I'm evaluating my own worth? We'd like to say, oh, I just love myself unconditionally. But we live in a conditional world. And so some conditions are usually required. I mean, if we take terrible care of ourselves, we're not likely to have high self-worth, even if we have a gospel of self-love. I mean, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not walking your talk. And so questions of what actually defines self-worth, and are you actually doing things that reflect a healthy evaluation of yourself? Number 4 would be moderation. Venus and Saturn can bring up the need for greater restraint or delayed gratification or self-control, especially with respect to things like sex, spending, indulgence, beauty, pleasure. So thinking about moderation. Or restrictiveness and oppression, on the other hand, if you're someone who is not allowing yourself a space to have fun, to enjoy, then maybe some sense of releasing a repressive tendency, letting your hair down a little bit. Number 5 would be building beauty or health. When it comes to beauty or health with Saturn, it's usually slow and steady, consistent habits of care and beauty that build a lasting sense of beauty or well-being. So consider all of those things. Let's move into love and relationships, where Venus and Saturn has some very specific ways of showing up. And honestly, most of the time when people talk about Venus, Saturn, and broadly speaking in astrological content creation, they're going to talk about love and relationships anyway, since Venus, this tends to be her domain. The first one is the question about intimacy and boundaries. Saturn and Venus can establish the need for better, healthier, clearer boundaries in love, friendships, intimacy, or on the other hand, it can speak to being overly conservative, cautious, doubtful, skeptical, not trusting, or rigid in some ways, and the need for greater openness. So watch for either extreme to be pronounced somehow in love and relationships. 2 is the work of love. Any relationship requires a kind of ongoing work. There's a burden that we are helping each other carry, that we're helping each other grow and evolve, is part of the work of love. So sometimes love goes through contractive periods where it's not as enjoyable, but the work isn't any less important. Those contractive periods are somehow vital to the ongoing vibrancy, beauty, depth, intimacy of the relationship itself. Or sometimes the work isn't worth it, and you have to sit and ask that question: is this worth it? Number 3 would be commitment issues. Are you afraid to commit? Are you overly eager to commit and not being discerning enough? What is worth your commitment and what isn't? What is reciprocity that allows for commitment to flourish? And what is, if something lacks reciprocity and commitment can therefore not flourish, you're often getting really clear about that kind of thing right now. So any issues around commitment and what allows for healthy, safe, connected spaces and what does not. Number 4 would be Saturnian attractions, being attracted to people who have their shit together, being attracted to people who take care of themselves, who are mature, who are well boundaried and well resourced emotionally and maybe materially. Any kind of Saturnian attraction will usually be to someone who is safe, mature, reliable, somewhat grounded, realistic. But also be careful, because sometimes the Saturnian attraction will be a projection of something that we need to cultivate ourselves. Oh, I'm attracted to someone who's 30 years older than me when I'm in my 20s, and it's because I'm seeking adulthood and I need to find that on my own. I'm not judging any kind of relationship or age or whatever, but you get what I'm saying. Be careful of also projecting Saturn onto someone else when there may be some feature of your own development that requires a more Saturnian feature. So I hope that makes sense. I'm having trouble finding my words there. All right, finally, love and obligation. Every relationship typically obligates us to other people and certain kinds of duties and expectations and responsibilities that come with commitment and love. Sometimes people find that during Venus-Saturn dynamics, their loved one is sick and they have to carry the load for a couple of weeks, and it creates an extraordinary burden and pressure, but that's part of the love and the work and the obligation. Other times, there's an unfair distribution of obligation and care and connection. So evaluating those kinds of things can be a big part of what happens in relationships around Venus and Saturn. Also, just crucibles or moments of make or break in relationships are quite common during Venus-Saturn oppositions. Finally, or next, let's move into career or work. So when Venus and Saturn show up in the workplace, we often start thinking about what healthy boundaries look like in workplace relationships or workplace dynamics with other people. What are the limits of how far you can relate or get along with someone at work? What are the limits or appropriate boundaries within certain workplace relationships? Not uncommon to see people showing up at HR during a Venus Saturn dynamic because they feel that someone is disrespecting them, or worse. Number two would be the need for a more serious level of artistic or creative work. So when you go to your boss and you say, look, I'm not feeling like I'm giving all of my creative gifts. I feel like my potential here is greater than how I'm being used, or something like that. Venus and Saturn together will typically want a greater level of value, beauty, work, and outcome. Like there could be something greater, something more serious, something deeper, something more beautiful. And I'm feeling frustrated because I need more of that somehow, or this could be better than it is. Those are quite common expressions of Venus-Saturn dynamics in the workplace. Feeling undervalued. If you feel like you're not seen, you're not cherished, you're not loved, you're not respected, if you feel slighted, misunderstood, alienated, ostracized within the workplace, that's a terrible feeling, but it is quite common for Venus and Saturn to bring up some feeling of being an outsider, not fitting in, feeling undervalued within the workplace. Finally the next one would be obstacles or gatekeepers, where there's just obstacles to harmony, grace, flow, or positive outcomes at work that you're just having to deal with, like limits or blocks to a project or to within a relationship. Or you can find that there's someone who's just being difficult and saying no just to exercise power and trying to be frustrating, like gatekeeping. Finally, the Venus-Saturn dynamic can, even though there's a tension around it, it can still lead to a person feeling like they're building their resume, they're developing a more solid reputation, they're seeing success from long-term investments in work and creative output. So Venus-Saturn will often crystallize into a sense of greater responsibility, or being seen and valued at a higher level because of work that's delivering over a long period of time. Finally, let's move into family dynamics. So when Venus-Saturn shows up in the home and family, you will often see, very simply, strain in family relationships. Sometimes there's divorce, sometimes there's fighting, sometimes there's strain in sibling relationships. Just in general, family, and even the overlap between family and marriage constellating through multiple families that are all connected, that kind of stuff will often show up with Venus-Saturn in the home. Number two would be responsibilities around the house, distribution of responsibilities and commitments and obligations that we have to each other as a constellation. Someone needs a little bit of money because they're hurting. Someone needs a little bit of hand because they're sick, and you're going to step in and help your sister with childcare. Whatever the case may be, that sense that there are needs and duties and obligations and responsibilities that are expressing themselves around home and family relationships. Also about the work balance and how work and duties are distributed around the home within a family. Comfort and austerity, the split between an environment that's organized, clean, disciplined, and in a way like well controlled. On the other hand, sometimes too much control, too much organization can stress that home environment out, and it's not relaxing enough. So austerity versus comfort, or cleanliness, control, organization, structure versus ease, flow, grace, play, sensuality, pleasure, comfort. Sometimes there's a tension between those two things that just manifest around the home, or around different people in the home and how they operate or how they see things. One person loves eating Cheetos on the couch. The other person feels like they're always vacuuming the couch. You get some stress around it. Okay, so number 4 is boundaries. Boundaries at home. Boundaries at home might be questions about where to do something, like where is my home office space versus where is your play space, or boundaries at home for my daughters might be rules about knocking on each other's doors versus just barging in. The boundaries around the home have to do with creating a healthy sense of respect for individual spaces and different functions of spaces, while also allowing for flow so that things aren't too strict or tight. But you can see how Venus Saturn is like flow and ease along with like structure. So boundaries at home, in the family, in the house, in the physical layout of the home. And then finally, I would say that Venus Saturn will often eliminate things that are frivolous or unnecessary. Like Venus Saturn is like purging your pantry, or you're cleaning out your fridge or your freezer in the garage if you got one of those. I'll never forget. I'll never forget. We had people at our yoga studio gave us all this food for when my wife was about to have our second baby. So we had like all this really, like, people made us this really nice stuff. And while we were at the hospital, and it was like a midwifing center, and the power at home went out, and so we ended up losing like all this like wonderful stuff people made us. And then I remember the project of cleaning out that freezer, which absolutely sucked. But anyway, paring down to what is essential. Hopefully you're not cleaning out a freezer is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, you got to Marie Kondo your house, your apartment. This could be a time to do it. Either that or just simplifying, just making. Sometimes enjoyment is amplified when clutter is removed, or when things are clean. There's a sense of, I can actually relax a little bit more because the mental clutter comes with the physical clutter, and then enjoyment is able to exist because you've gotten rid of things that are unnecessary somehow. All right, well, that's it for today. That's what I've got for you. I hope this has been useful. We'll do some horoscopes tomorrow. Stick around when I sign off. I can't wait for this next program to begin in November. Check it out. Come study with us. These programs are absolutely fantastic. There's nothing better than connecting with a lineage and a community of people that are part of a lineage. That's been my dream and goal for many, many years at Nightlight, is to create a vibrant, living lineage. It's not just about me and the way I teach or do things. It's about a group of people that increasingly supports one another. And that's what Nightlight has really become over the years. These programs are the absolute best thing I've created. So check them out. I think you'll love it. And more on the program next after I sign off. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first-year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer, or just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that, unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people, and I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, if you can attend a few and then one week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology, so psychological counseling skills, is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1-year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology, but also values grounded everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interests, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you could only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is apply. You fill out the little form. You tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale-based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.